It's Christmas Eve. So hopefully you're, enjoying some quality time with family and friends.
Yeah.
But, let's be real.
Right.
Sometimes those holiday gatherings can involve some, shall we say, lively discussions.
Yeah, for sure.
Ever find yourself locked in a debate with your Uncle Bob
Oh, yeah.
about why fruitcake is an abomination or something?
Oh, totally. Those spirited family debates are definitely a holiday tradition for some.
Exactly. But what if instead of those conversations feeling like a battlefield,
Yeah.
we could approach them as opportunities to really understand each other better? That's exactly what we're diving into today, conflict resolution and how to turn disagreements into productive conversations.
All right.
We've got some really cool sources to help us unpack this.
Okay.
We're going to learn about Penn State's World in Conversation Center, or WINC for short,
Right.
and their amazing work using dialogue to tackle complex social issues.
Yeah.
We'll also be looking at a fascinating approach called Street Epistemology, which uses a question-based method to examine beliefs.
Yeah.
And then we'll explore how these two seemingly different approaches could actually work together
Interesting.
to become like a dynamic duo for resolving conflict.
It's an interesting pairing for sure.
Yeah.
WINC often works with groups to address interpersonal and social conflicts, while street epistemology tends to focus on individual belief systems.
Right. So let's start with WINC. What exactly do they do?
So WINC was founded by Dr. Laurie Mulvey and Dr. Sam Richards at Penn State.
Okay.
And their mission is to use dialogue as a tool to bridge divides and address all sorts of challenging social issues.
Okay.
What's really impressive is that they train undergraduate students to facilitate these dialogues.
Wait, undergraduate students?
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
I can only imagine the kind of nuance and sensitivity
Right.
required to guide those conversations.
For sure.
So what kinds of things do they tackle?
Oh, they do it all.
Wow.
From facilitating dialogues between students and incarcerated individuals
Okay.
to organizing cross-cultural exchanges with international students. They even address issues specific to campus life,
Oh, wow.
like drinking culture.
Okay.
Their impact goes way beyond Penn State, too.
Great.
They've been involved in community engagement, conflict resolution programs, and even international diplomacy.
Wow, that's quite a range.
Yeah.
But it sounds like they're not just about resolving political arguments,
Right.
but about helping people connect on a deeper human level.
Yeah, definitely.
Okay, so they're obviously doing amazing work.
Yeah.
But what's the secret to their approach?
Hmm.
I understand they've even published a book about it.
They have. It's called Transforming Conflict and Collaboration.
Okay.
And it's available for free online.
Oh,
It's a
wow.
really accessible read, even if you're not a conflict resolution expert.
Perfect for our listeners who want to gain knowledge quickly. So
Right.
what's the main takeaway from the book?
The core message is that conflict shouldn't be seen as something to avoid or something you need to win. Instead, WINC views conflict as a chance for growth, deeper understanding, and even stronger collaboration.
I love that. It takes the pressure off needing to win an argument
Right.
and shifts the focus to building relationships.
Yeah, for sure.
But how exactly do they do that?
They have a specific method that revolves around two key elements:
Okay.
mindset and skills.
Got it.
The mindset piece is all about approaching conversations with neutrality. You're not taking sides, you're simply there to facilitate a productive dialogue.
That sounds incredibly difficult.
Right?
Especially when we're talking about issues we're personally invested in.
Yeah.
How can you possibly stay neutral when you feel strongly about something?
It definitely takes practice.
Yeah.
But the book offers some really helpful strategies.
Okay.
One way to cultivate neutrality is to reframe your internal language.
Interesting.
Instead of thinking, I need to prove them wrong, try thinking, I want to understand where they're coming from. That subtle shift in perspective can make a huge difference.
That's a great tip.
Yeah.
So it's about approaching the conversation with genuine curiosity
Right. Here.
rather than a desire to win.
Exactly.
What else is involved in the WINC mindset?
They also emphasize the importance of being comfortable with ambiguity.
Okay.
You're not going into the conversation with a predetermined outcome in mind.
Right.
You're open to the possibility that your own views might evolve or that you might discover common ground in unexpected places.
Okay, so it's about letting go of the need to be right
Yeah.
and embracing the uncertainty of the process.
Yeah.
That's pretty counterintuitive,
Yeah.
but I can see how it could be liberating.
Right.
So we've got the mindset piece.
Okay.
What about the skills? What are some of the concrete techniques they teach?
Active listening is a huge one.
Okay.
It's not just about hearing the words the other person is saying, but truly paying attention to their tone, their body language,
Okay.
and the emotions behind their words. Right.
You're trying to understand the deeper meaning behind what they're communicating.
Right, because sometimes what people say isn't exactly what they mean.
For sure.
And sometimes it's more about what's not being said.
Exactly.
Okay.
And WinC teaches specific techniques for active listening.
Okay.
Like paraphrasing and summarizing to make sure you're accurately understanding the other person's perspective.
Right.
They also emphasize the importance of asking open-ended questions.
Okay.
Questions that can't be answered with a simple yes or no, but encourage the other person to elaborate and share their thoughts and feelings more fully. I can see how those kinds of questions could lead to a much richer and more nuanced conversation.
Right.
Are there other key skills involved in the WinC method?
Absolutely. Another important one is managing group dynamics.
Okay.
If you're working with a group, it's essential to make sure everyone feels heard and respected,
Right.
and that no one voice dominates the conversation. WinC facilitators often establish ground rules at the beginning of a dialogue. Things like no interrupting and making sure everyone has a chance to speak.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
So it's not just about the content of the conversation,
Right.
but also about creating a safe and respectful space for everyone to participate.
Exactly.
Okay.
And to maintain that respectful atmosphere.
Yeah.
They also teach techniques for reframing conflict.
Okay.
So instead of getting stuck arguing about specific positions or demands,
Right.
you help people to identify the underlying interests and needs that are driving those positions.
So it's about shifting the focus from what to why.
Yes.
Instead of arguing about what should be done,
Right.
you're trying to understand why each person wants what they want.
Precisely. And that can lead to some surprising discoveries.
Mm.
Often when we uncover those deeper motivations,
Yeah.
we find that we have more in common than we initially thought.
I love that idea.
Yeah.
It's like suddenly finding the missing puzzle piece that makes everything click into place.
Exactly.
So we've got this incredibly comprehensive approach from WinC.
Yeah.
But before we dive deeper into their world,
Okay.
I want to introduce another fascinating perspective into the mix.
Okay.
Street epistemology.
Ah, yes. Street epistemology, or SE as it's often called, takes a slightly different but equally intriguing approach to constructive dialogue.
I'm ready to learn more.
Okay.
What exactly is street epistemology?
Well, it's essentially the study of knowledge, how we know what we know, but applied in a very practical and down-to-earth way.
Okay.
And it gets its name because it's often practiced in informal settings,
Got it.
like public spaces or online forums, where people are engaging in conversations about their beliefs.
So it's not confined to academic ivory towers.
Right.
It's happening out in the real world in everyday conversations.
Exactly.
Okay.
And while it might sound intimidating,
Yeah.
it's actually a very accessible approach.
Okay. I'm intrigued. How does it work in practice?
Okay, imagine you're talking to someone about a strongly held belief they have, maybe something related to religion, politics, or even something less serious, like their unwavering faith in a particular sports team.
Right.
A street epistemologist wouldn't try to argue with them or tell them they're wrong.
Yeah.
Instead, they would use a series of carefully crafted questions to help the person examine the basis of their belief.
So it's about guiding someone through a process of self-reflection.
Right.
Rather than imposing your own views on them.
Exactly.
Okay.
And this is where the Socratic method comes in.
Got it.
Street epistemology relies heavily on Socratic questioning,
Okay.
which involves asking open-ended questions that encourage the person to think critically about their own beliefs and the evidence that supports them.
I'm starting to see some parallels here with the WinC approach.
Yeah.
Both emphasize skillful questioning and creating a space for open-minded exploration.
Absolutely. You're absolutely right. There's a lot of common ground between these two approaches, even though they come from seemingly different worlds.
This is fascinating.
It is.
So we've got WinC, the masters of group dialogue and conflict transformation, and street epistemology, the champions of individual belief examination.
Okay.
But how do these two approaches fit together? Could they actually complement each other?
We'll have to see.
We'll explore those questions and more when we return after a quick break.
Sounds good.
Join the Barnyard Party Click. Subscribe today.
I like that.
It's like very on the nose.
Sure. Welcome back.
So before the break, we were, getting into WIN-C and street epistemology.
Right. 2 approaches to communication that both prioritize dialogue and understanding.
And we were just starting to talk about how these 2 methods could potentially work together.
Yeah, and that's where things get really interesting.
So let's get into it. How could WIN-C and street epistemology actually complement each other? What would that look like in real life?
Okay, imagine a scenario where you have a group of people trying to make a decision about something that's important to all of them.
Okay.
Maybe it's a community group deciding how to allocate resources, or a family trying to figure out where to go on vacation.
Okay.
Tensions are high, and people are starting to dig in their heels defending their own ideas.
Oh, that sounds familiar.
My
family's annual vacation planning sessions are legendary for their, shall we say, passionate discussions.
Right. Well, in this scenario, the WIN-C facilitator would step in and use their skills to create a space for productive dialogue. They had established some ground rules for the conversation, encourage everyone to listen respectfully, and help people to articulate their perspectives clearly and calmly.
So they're setting the stage for a healthy and productive conversation.
Exactly.
But what happens when you get down to the actual disagreements?
Yeah.
That's where things can get really tricky.
That's where street epistemology can come in.
Okay.
Imagine that in this group, you have a couple of people who have very strong opinions about a particular aspect of the decision. Instead of letting those opinions turn into a shouting match, the street epistemologist would step in and start asking some carefully crafted questions.
So instead of arguing about the issue itself,
Yeah.
you're shifting the focus to the reasoning behind those strong opinions.
Right.
I like it.
They might ask things like, what are your reasons for feeling so strongly about this?
Okay.
Or what evidence led you to believe that this is the best course of action?
It's like you're hitting the pause button on the argument and saying, okay, let's break this down and really understand where these ideas are coming from.
Yes. And this is where the beauty of Socratic questioning really shines. You're not trying to tell anyone they're wrong or force them to change their mind. You're simply guiding them through a process of self-reflection, helping them to examine their own beliefs and the reasons behind them.
I'm starting to see how powerful this combination could be. WIN-C helps create a safe space for dialogue. And street epistemology provides the tools to really dig into those deeply held beliefs and assumptions that often fuel conflict.
Exactly.
But how would someone actually use this in real life? Would they need to become certified in both approaches?
Not necessarily. Even just understanding the basic principles of these methods can have a huge impact on your communication skills. Let me give you an example. Imagine you're at that holiday gathering. And your uncle starts going on a rant about his favorite political candidate.
Oh, boy.
Instead of getting defensive or trying to shut down the conversation, you could try using some of the techniques we've been discussing.
Okay, so I take a deep breath, remind myself to stay neutral and curious. And then what?
You could start by asking some open-ended questions. Instead of saying, you're wrong, you could say something like, what makes you such a strong supporter of this candidate? Or what policies do you find most appealing?
I see. So instead of arguing, I'm trying to understand his perspective.
Exactly. And you might be surprised by what you learn. You might discover that you actually agree on certain issues. Or that his reasoning is more complex than you initially thought. Even if you don't end up changing each other's minds. You've at least created a space for respectful dialogue and deeper understanding.
And maybe, just maybe, you've helped to de-escalate a potentially explosive situation.
Exactly. It's not about winning or losing. It's about turning a potentially divisive conversation into an opportunity for connection and learning.
I love that. It feels so much more hopeful and empowering than the usual approach of just trying to avoid those touchy subjects altogether.
Absolutely. And that's what's so exciting about this WIN-C Street epistemology power couple. It gives us a framework for engaging with those difficult conversations in a way that feels constructive and even, dare I say, enjoyable.
Okay. I'm totally on board with this power couple idea. But let's be realistic. Are there any challenges to actually making this collaboration work?
Well, It wouldn't be a deep dive if we didn't explore both sides, right?
Right.
Of course there are potential challenges.
Yeah, okay.
For example, there might be differences in the way these approaches are typically taught or implemented.
Right. WinC is often used in formal group settings,
Yeah.
while street epistemology is more often practiced in informal one-on-one conversations.
Exactly. So figuring out how to bridge those differences would be important.
Hmm.
But I think those are challenges that can be overcome.
Yeah.
Some creative thinking and a willingness to adapt.
And the potential benefits seem well worth the effort. I mean,
Yeah.
imagine a world where people are actually excited
Right.
to engage in those challenging conversations,
Yeah.
where disagreement is seen as an opportunity for growth rather than a threat.
It's a beautiful vision, isn't it?
It is.
And I think it's a vision worth striving for.
Absolutely. But for now, let's bring it back to our listeners and talk about how they can start applying these ideas in their own lives.
Right.
What are some key takeaways they can implement right away, even if they've never heard of WinC or street epistemology before?
I'm happy to share some practical tips.
Okay.
Remember, we're not suggesting that you turn every conversation into a philosophical debate.
Right.
It's more about subtle shifts in your mindset and approach to communication.
So less Socrates, more everyday conversation ninja.
Exactly. And remember, the best way to learn these skills is to practice them.
Okay.
So why not start this holiday season? Instead of dreading those potentially awkward conversations with family and friends, see them as an opportunity to flex your new communication muscles.
I like that. Our cows are watching. Make them proud by subscribing.
What?
It's like, am I signing up for a channel? Or like, am I trying to impress a herd of cows?
Yeah. Are they judging my YouTube habits?
I know, it's very strange. Welcome back. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling pretty energized after that deep dive into WinC and street epistemology.
It really is fascinating how these two approaches can, they can work together to help us navigate those challenging conversations.
Yeah, and it's especially timely, given that, it's Christmas Eve.
Right.
I imagine a lot of our listeners are gearing up for some interesting family dynamics.
Oh, for sure.
So, if your holiday gathering starts to feel like a verbal sparring match,
Right.
just remember the tools that we've been talking about.
Exactly. It's all about shifting from a mindset of combat to one of curiosity. And really, instead of trying to win the argument, approach the conversation as an opportunity to understand the other person's perspective.
Yeah, easier said than done right.
Right.
Especially when it's your Aunt Carol insisting that her pecan pie is superior to everyone else's.
Oh, well, even in those moments where you might be, tempted to roll your eyes, just remember the power of active listening.
Yeah.
Really try to hear what the other person is saying and ask clarifying questions.
Like, Aunt Carol, what is it about your pecan pie that makes it so special?
Precisely.
Yeah.
You might learn something new about your aunt's baking process or even, discover a shared passion for quality ingredients.
Right.
And who knows, maybe you'll even get her secret recipe.
Okay, you've convinced me. I'm ready to channel my interactive listener this Christmas.
Good.
But what about those situations where things get really heated?
Yeah.
Like, full-blown political debates erupting at the dinner table.
Oh, right. Yeah. In those moments, you want to remember the de-escalation techniques that we talked about.
Okay.
Take a deep breath and try to use calming language. Remind yourself that it's okay to agree to disagree.
Right. And if things are getting really out of hand, it's always okay to politely excuse yourself from the conversation.
Yeah, exactly. You don't have to engage in every battle. Sometimes the most skillful move is knowing when to step back and let things cool down a little bit.
Okay, so we've got some great strategies for dealing with those potentially explosive conversations.
Right.
But what about applying these ideas to our everyday lives, outside of the holiday season?
Well, think about it this way. Every interaction we have is an opportunity to practice these communication skills. Whether you're negotiating a deadline with a coworker or resolving a conflict with a friend, these principles can help you build stronger relationships and create more positive outcomes.
Well, it's not just about surviving the holidays.
Right.
It's about becoming a better communicator in all aspects of our lives.
Exactly. And as we cultivate these skills, we contribute to a more understanding and compassionate world. It's like a ripple effect,
I love that image. So even if you never become a professional mediator or facilitator,
right,
simply by embracing these principles, you can make a positive difference in your own little corner of the world.
Absolutely. And who knows, maybe you'll even inspire others to adopt a more constructive approach to communication.
Yeah. That's a wonderful thought. So as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to thank you for sharing your expertise with us.
Oh, it's been my pleasure.
And to all our listeners out there, we wish you a happy and peaceful holiday season.
Right.
Filled with meaningful conversations and deeper connections.
Absolutely.
And remember, the tools and insights we've discussed today are just a starting point.
Yeah.
Keep exploring, keep learning, and keep those conversations flowing. Thanks for joining us on The Deep Dive.